My name is Pete Largy, and I am going to present a narrative history of Elcam from 1972 to the end of 2013. I had been associated with Elcam throughout that period of time. I had met with Virgil Quirk in April of 1972 to discuss the development of a sheltered workshop. Virgil was president of the El County Association for Retarded Citizens. They had formed a steering committee to develop Elcam. Elcam was incorporated as the St. Mary's Work Activities Center on May 1st, 1972. The original location of Elcam was this house on Stackpole Street, which had been donated by the Stackpole Carbon Company. In this house, various types of arts and crafts activities were done, and these would be sold at festivals and fairs and so on. They also had an outlet on South Michael Street, which is located in the vicinity where the current Sheetz is located. Parents were also very active during these initial early years in raising money to help support the center. They did things such as bake sales, ticket raffles, and so on. By January of 1973, there were over 20 clients, and the St. Mary's Work Activities Center moved to the Lewis Building on the $1 Million Highway. The clients continued to do arts and crafts work, but it was there that the St. Mary's Work Activities Center started doing inspection work for the powdered metal industry. At that time, powdered metal inspection was done internally at each of the powdered metal companies. Elcam was the first outside vendor to offer powdered metal inspection services. IPM was recognized as Elcam's first industrial customer. In January of 1974, the St. Mary's Work Activities Center changed its name to the Elcam Vocational Rehabilitation Center. These pictures illustrate some of the bench inspection work that was being done by the clients. At this time, there were no group homes to serve individuals with mental retardation, and so the clients generally lived at home, in state institutions, or in some cases at the county home. Such was the case of the individual in the upper photo. He would later move to the Elk Haven nursing home when it was established. The term mental retardation was the term generally used throughout this period, and in the early years it designated an individual who scored 1 to 2 standard deviations below the mean on a standardized intelligence test. That would be later changed to 2 standard deviations below the mean, or an IQ of approximately 70. George Von Hock was the original executive director of Elcam. I was hired upon graduation from Graduate School in Rehabilitation Counseling in 1973. I had had nearly 3 years of experience in workshops. My job was to develop programs and services. Michael Keller had been hired as a student intern for the summer and stayed on to help with production and marketing. He would later become operations director, a position he holds until this day. The bottom picture shows a board meeting which included members such as Ham Johnson, George, Dan DeLulu, Rita Sword, and Bob Kime. It was noted that there was a high percentage of individuals in the criminal justice system that were disabled, but could be productive if given the opportunity. And so Elcam developed a program with a local judicial district that involved the judge, the district attorney, the probation office, and the seat of manpower program. Over the next 3 years, it would serve 35 individuals with about 100% placement into jobs and no recidivism while in the program. Elcam continued to work with the Elk County Prison to the end of 2013 and beyond. In this picture, left to right, back Jerry Sorg, who was public defender, Vic Reed, county planner, George, myself, bottom row, Frank Kuntz, county commissioner, Judge Greiner, and Doris Teddes from the Sea to Manpower program. By now, Elcam had extended its services to all disability groups, which had the unfortunate effect of alienating Elcam from the local Association for Retarded Citizens, wanted Elcam to focus on the mentally retarded since they had formed Elcam. So the need for services expanded, and in July of 1974, Elcam moved to the vacated Spruce Street Elementary School. In addition to inspection work, Elcam did machining work and began doing work for Osram Sylvanium. One of the jobs for Osram required that light bulbs be hand-packed by the blind for Lions Club sales. At one point, Elcam employed several individuals that were blind and had no vision to do this operation. It was at this point that we began to establish several philosophies that were somewhat unique for workshops, but that would ultimately serve our mission very well. Workshops were already under attack in 1974, primarily because of their lack of meaningful work for the clients and the sub-minimum wages. As a house parent, I experienced the detrimental impact of sending a person to a workshop to sit all day and to do nothing, or to do meaningless activities so that the workshop could collect its fees. That could not be part of Elcam. That is not acceptable. We needed to provide meaningful work for our clients at all times. The second concept was independence to the extent possible. We had already experienced a threat of shutdown from the lack of funding. Originally, the funding for Elcam came through the state, the Mental Health Non-Retardation Act of 1966, and our budget was between $40,000 and $50,000. We could not be fully reliant on the whims of politicians. The third concept was non-disabled in the workforce. If you want to set normal standards and do realistic evaluations and training, you need an environment that includes the non-disabled. You do not want a work environment that includes just individuals with disabilities. The board of directors of Elcam was reluctant at first, limiting us to 10% of the workforce. But that would change over time as the board realized the value of incorporating non-disabled workers with disabled workers. Grant writing was very important in the early years of Elcam. Over $2 million in grants would be written over several years to secure funding for staff, equipment, and facilities. The major grant sources included the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, Sea to Manpower programs, the Elk County Association for Retarded Citizens, the Governor's Justice Commission, and some Elk County revenue sharing. An Elk County revenue sharing grant of $10,000 enabled Elcam to purchase a truck, which we used to transport material to and from the industries that we served. And an Office of Vocational Rehabilitation grant enabled Elcam to purchase needed equipment. George Von Hock left in 1975, and at that time I was promoted from Assistant Executive Director to Executive Director. It has always been the goal of Elcam to place its trainees into competitive employment. Recognizing that industries had a need for trained machine operators, Elcam established a training program that would serve economically disadvantaged individuals from the six-county area. It served 24 individuals a year with a near 100% placement rate from 1975 until 1983. The program ended with the advent of CNC machining because Elcam didn't have the CNC equipment. This program was taken over by North Central Regional Planning and Development Commission, which did have access to purchasing CNC equipment. In this picture, left to right, Pat O'Donnell. He was a CETA liaison He was area manpower planner for the Balance Estate prime sponsor, which provided the funding for this project. Next to him is John Williams, an Elcam consular. Lee Stauffer was a machinist at the Stackpole Carbon Company who did the training throughout this entire program. Next to him is one of the trainees, and on the far right, Frank Kuntz, Elk County Commissioner. This training program was an intensive hands-on training program wherein the trainees had to complete several projects using the grinder, the lathe, the mill, while receiving instruction in blueprint reading and use of the torch. Professional textbooks were utilized. The lathe, the grinder, the milling machine. These pictures illustrate the three basic programs that Elcam provided in 1976. The Work Activities Unit is generally defined by the Department of Labor as serving individuals whose productive capacities are less than 25% of the normal rate. Sheltered Workshop is a classification for individuals whose productivity ranges above the 25% of normal. And vocational training included the other programs at Elcam, the machine shop technology, and the work adjustment programs, and the vocational evaluation programs. The next goal of Elcam was to create an appropriate, accessible facility. It was a philosophy of Elcam that we should be located in an appropriate location, such as an industrial park. Many workshops are located in donated buildings which are often inaccessible and inappropriate. To that end, we received 4 acres from Elk County, in which we planned for a new facility. This area was planned to be a future industrial park area. This is a view of the area at that time, looking down West Creek Road. Elcam did some other unique projects at this time. One of those was making leather calendars. This one was designed by Dick Dornish to celebrate the bicentennial of the United States, and it featured individuals going to church in 1776 and going to church in 1976. These calendars would be sold to industries and to residents. This next calendar was designed by Marcia Keller and featured an elk, a symbol of Elk County. In February of 1977, the board approved a building project. There would be 2 buildings, one to house the machine shop training program, which would be 50 by 50, and the other would house the workshop, 80 by 170. Architectural plans were approved by August of 77. Bill Foltz was the architect. The original projected costs for this construction were $520,000. But these costs increased to over $700,000 because of the necessity to install a sewage treatment plant. This tertiary treatment plant needed daily monitoring of raw sewage. That responsibility fell to Mike Keller and myself. This was one of the brochures we used in promoting the project. We would speak to various organizations about our project. We released several newspaper articles during this project. Pictured on the far right is Ed McConnell, who was the area administrator of the county mental health, mental retardation program at that time. The county MHMR program has always been the primary funder of services at Elcam. Originally, they funded nearly 100% of the Elcam budget, but as Elcam expanded its industrial operations, that percentage dropped to somewhere between 10 and 15%. As of the end of 2013, county MHMR funding represented about 15% of the total budget. Hamlin Johnson was chairman of the fundraising committee for this project. He did a tremendous job and nearly single-handedly raised over $350,000. The Stackpole Hall Foundation was critical to our fundraising effort and gave us $100,000. Pictured is Ham receiving a check from Bill Conrad from the Stackpole Hall Foundation. Henry Jesberger was chairman of the Elcam Building Committee and is shown here receiving a check from Ronald Kulik, who was executive director of North Central Regional Planning and Development Commission. North Central ultimately funded $350,000 of this project. Pictured also is Ron Beimel, Frank Kuntz, and George Lavella, who were commissioners at that time. In 1978, we also used our facilities and employed the first of many local professionals to provide needed services for industries, which would eventually include engineers, industrial hygienists, certified occupational health nurse, physical therapist, occupational therapists, physicians, machinists, nurses, and other health professionals. We provided a range of industrial services in the areas of safety, hearing conservation, industrial hygiene, and so on. One example was a basic mechanics course and a machine shop course that we offered for Osram, Pennsylvania. This is a picture of a report on that program as presented in an Osram newsletter. We had to rebid our project, but on April 5, 1979, Elcam approved a bid from Eckert Construction Company for $578,000. Groundbreaking was held on May 21, 1979. We released several progress reports to the local newspapers that the construction was on schedule. The framework for the machine shop building was up, and the construction was nearing a reality, picturing Rita Sorg on the left, secretary, Bob Kime next, president, Henry Jesberger, vice president, and Ham Johnson on the right, treasurer. Our big day was May 1st, 1980. And we had an open house in August of 1980. This was the new facility. Here are some of the work operations. In June of 1982, Elcam announced its first of many expansions during the 80s. 4,080 square feet were added. Pictured above is Dennis Anderson, secretary, M. Johnson, treasurer, Jim Oley, vice president. Bottom left, Bob Kime, president, and Rita Sorg. In the bottom picture are Don and Bill Reed from Reed Brothers Construction that would do the expansion, as well as myself. In this flyer, the location of the expansion is shown in the upper right-hand corner. Grants continue to help in our growth. We received many grants from the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. Most of them were equipment grants. Pictured is Julius Iacurto, District Administrator of OVR at that point, Ham Johnson, and Dennis Anderson. We used an SBA loan to fund our next expansion of 10,400 square feet in 1983. Pictured is Henry Jesberger, Ham Johnson, and Tom Wagner. We generally published a board picture and progress report after every annual meeting. This photo shows the board of directors on top and the Elcam staff in 1983. Our next big project was the purchase of an additional 29 acres from Elk County. The County of Elk was looking to sell approximately 200 acres, and we bought 29 acres at a cost of $60,000. John Fernan handled this purchase, and fortunately for Elcam, he maintained mineral rights. On two subsequent occasions during the 80s when we expanded, we encountered veins of coal, and we retained the rights to sell that coal. In October of 1986, Elcam announced another expansion, and by 1987, Elcam had 45,000 square feet in its facility. In 1987, we received a grant from the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation to set up an industrial rehabilitation program. This grant paid for equipment and a part-time occupational therapist. Ann Pisner was hired. Ann was a certified, licensed, and registered occupational therapist. Ann worked with clients through the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation and with injured employees from numerous industries throughout the areas. She did functional capacity evaluations and work hardening. Exercise is essential in rehabilitation. And Elcam had various exercise equipment, such as a ski machine that is pictured here. We also had a physical therapy area that was operated by Ray Butterfield, a physical therapist. Back injuries were common in local industries because there was much heavy lifting, such as moving a 300 to 500 pound barrel of powder onto a pallet, and did a number of training programs in proper lifting and material moving for the various industries. Excessive pushing and pulling forces can also contribute to industrial injuries. Ann would go into various industries to evaluate the required pushing and pulling forces. In this picture, the individual is learning how to push and pull properly. This sled is used to simulate the required pushing and pulling forces. In 1988, Elcam planned its final expansion of the work area of the St. Mary's facility, and the facility would be 67,500 square feet when completed. Since there was a mountain of ground behind the original Elcam construction, much site work was necessary during the various expansions at Elcam. This was an aerial view of Elcam upon its expansion in 1989. We encouraged tours by state and federal officials. Pictured above is Dick Hartnett, who was area administrator of MHMR at that time, Cindy Zembricki, who would later become the administrator, Jim Oley, president of Elcam, and Steve Eidelman. Steve was the deputy secretary of the Office of Mental Retardation, which was the agency which basically funded the services at Elcam. Steve said that if every workshop were like Elcam, there would be no concerns about children workshops. Federal Representative Bill Klinger visited Elcam in 1989. On the left is Roger Hasselman and Jim Oley. It was pointed out to Bill that Elcam is a nonprofit corporation that derives 85% of its income from non-governmental sources, and is a tribute to the potential of nonprofit corporations if they focus on utilizing their strengths to achieve some degree of independence. In this picture, Dr. Morris Sorg is doing a cardiovascular assessment to determine the cardiac limitations of physical work demands. And Pisner, the occupational therapist, would set up a simulated work setting, and Dr. Sorg would evaluate the person's response to the physical demands of the work. For example, someone in a medium work classification may have to lift 50 pounds every so often. This could be assessed through a protocol that Ann provided, along with Dr. Sorg's assessment. It's a revolutionary idea, and we evaluated various individuals with this cardiac assessment. Elcam has been very grateful to the Stackpole Hall Foundation for their assistance in the growth and development of Elcam. Each summer, the foundation funds 4 students through the Summer Jobs Program. Pictured here is, on the far left, Kim Pisner, who was such a summer student in 1989, who was subsequently hired in 1990 as a full-time staff upon completion of her college education, and in 2014 became the executive director of Elcam. Elcam hosted a number of forums on industrial rehabilitation. These forums attracted people from as far away as Pittsburgh. The panels generally included doctors, attorneys, and representatives from insurance companies to discuss the various aspects of dealing with persons injured on the job. In 1991, the Elcam board was approached by Barry Peoples, who was a counselor from the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. He knew of the success of Elcam in St. Mary's, and he asked the board if they would consider setting up a program in Clearfield, because there were no services in that area. At first, the Elcam board rejected the idea, but in a subsequent board meeting, the board did vote to establish a facility in Clearfield. In October of 1992, Elcam purchased a speculation building in an industrial park in Clearfield. And Glenn Runge, an Elcam board member, quickly went to work and did the architectural work and got state approval. We were operational within 3 months. We began operations in January of 1993. The facility in Clearfield was different from St. Mary's in that it was established as an affirmative industry. In an affirmative industry, there are no subminimum wages. There are both disabled and non-disabled employees in an affirmative industry. Evaluation, training, and employment programs are provided to clients, but there is no pay on a piece rate basis. Clients are paid minimum wages or above. Linda Greenthaler, pictured on the left, was a second shift supervisor at Elcam, and she was promoted to manager of this facility. Kim Kashmir, a program manager at Elcam, would be in charge of client services in the new facility. This is an interior view of the facility. Much of the work was procured from the local industries, with some work sent from the St. Mary's facility. In 1993, the Industrial Rehabilitation Program evolved into a light-duty work program. The difference was that the injured employees were no longer on compensation. Upon injury, they were referred to Elcam and were paid their full wage regardless of their productivity. This resolved many problems related to workers' compensation. Over the next 20 years, Elcam would serve approximately 2,000 injured employees from industries throughout the area. This is a very successful program. In 1995, Goodwill Industries of Du Bois shut down their industrial contract center. Counselors from the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation approached Elcam about establishing a facility in Du Bois. The board approved, and Elcam rented warehouse space on Schaefer Drive and established a facility to serve clients through the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. In 1996, Elcam signed the paperwork to be the first tenant in the Sandy Township Industrial Park. Signing for Elcam was Hunts Arnold, and to the left of him, Glenn Runge. This facility would also be set up as an affirmative industry, even though there was some established need for sheltered workshop services. The Office of Vocational Rehabilitation wanted an affirmative industry, and they would be funding part of the initial operation. The County Mental Health Mental Retardation Program did not want to set up additional sheltered workshop services at that time. This facility was completed in 1997. It is 100 by 200 feet and is designed to be doubled in size. Kim Kashmer was promoted to plant manager of this facility. This is an inside view of the building. Assembling components for gas meters is one of the major jobs in this facility. Elcam also specialized in powdered metal assemblies in this facility. Elcam continued to hold seminars on workers' comp management. Board member Tom Wagner was generally the moderator for these seminars. In 1997, Elcam recognized the loss of board member Rita Sorg. Rita was instrumental in establishing and promoting the growth of Elcam. In 1998, Elcam became a certified supplier to Scroll Technologies out of Arkadelphia, Arkansas, and Elcam continues that relationship to this date. In November of 1999, Elcam decided to expand the Clearfield facility. Groundbreaking ceremonies were held in April of 2000. Morris Sorg, pictured in the middle, was president of Elcam. On his right is Linda Greenthon, plant manager, and to her right is Joe Kane from Conservco. They would be the general contractor for the expansion. This was the completed 40,000 square foot building. In 2001, Elcam lost another key board member, John Fernan, and paid tribute. Board members who attended the annual meeting in May of 2002 included, seated left to right, Linda Himes, Carol Kuntz, and Pisner. Standing left to right, Tom Wagner, Roger Hasselman, Neil Huffman, Jerry Sorg, Hunts Arnold, Glenn Runge, Ham Johnson. In 2002, Elcam announced that it will renovate 6,000 square feet and add about 2,000 square feet to create the community center. The community center was an idea first proposed in 1988, but it was only made possible in 2001 when the Office of Mental Retardation passed the philosophy of everyday lives, which meant that clients would now have more choice in the types of activities that would be funded. We met with the clients to determine what types of activities would be helpful in enhancing their independence and involvement in community life. We finished construction by February of 2003. The community center included a computer room with 12 workstations and a 5-foot training screen. restrooms, a kitchen area, a spacious multi-purpose room with a serving area. Games which would be used for training and socialization purposes, as well as for fillers when clients would need a break between activities. An arts and crafts area in which eventually over 50 different types of arts and crafts activities would be done. And 2 guinea pigs for those clients who loved animals and wanted to learn how to take care of them. Naomi Tucker was in charge of all the programs through 2013. Thereafter, the annual board meeting was held in the community center. It was always nicely decorated by Sharon Larden until the establishment of the Child Center. The board, staff, clients, and a few guests were invited to our opening event, a Valentine's dance, in 2003. The Elcam musical group, named the Elcam Gang by participant Lee Johnson, helped provide the entertainment. The availability of the community center enabled Elcam to initiate all types of new activities for the clients and for the community. There was the monthly Elcam Club Night. Halloween was a favorite event, as was Christmas. Dinner and a movie night, and of course, Easter Bunny. Movie discussion groups were held, and sometimes Don Bledgy, a teacher at the middle school, would bring his 8th grade class to socialize with the clients and to discuss a movie with a human theme, such as I Am Sam. Naomi added more and more community-based activities over the next 10 years, such as train rides, walks in the park, trips to shopping malls, a day at the dam, visits to the sick, and sharing art projects done at Elcam with the sick. As adults, we all have a responsibility to contribute to our community and to help others. Outside groups would often come to Elcam's club night, such as Dr. McVeigh's dancers. The center was also utilized for various types of community events, such as organizational meetings, industrial trainings, and documentary presentations. The Everyday Lives concept was a guiding force for approximately 10 years. It is currently being replaced by the concept of employment first. But this will herald some new and exciting directions for Elcam in years ahead. Basically, the thrust is community jobs and whatever support is necessary to maintain that job. In 2004, Elcam established the Rita Sword and Marcella Largy Memorial Fund as a hedge to help ensure that client services would always continue at Elcam. We noted that the lack of physical activity was being detrimental to many of our clients, as evidenced by the increase in pre-diabetic, diabetic, and obesity conditions of our clients. So in 2005, Elcam signed a contract to create an outdoor activity area with the intent to encourage our clients to increase their level of physical activity. Walmart gift cards are given for designated numbers of laps around the park area. A few of the activities include horseshoes and modified horseshoes, walking, kickball, basketball, and modified basketball, and pedal carts. Elcam has an ATV track that is over a mile long. and is the only facility that has an ATV training program for its clients. For many years, Elcam had a very active gardening program. Horticulture is a great activity for education, training, giving individuals a sense of accomplishment, and presenting potential job opportunities. It began with planting the seeds in February or March, transplanting, putting the plants under grow lights, setting them outside to harden off, watering, weeding, taking care of them, and picking them. Of course, the produce has to be clean to be ready for the market. The gardeners participated several times at the St. Mary's Farmers Market. Lee and Matt are quite proud of the carrots they raised. In 2006, Elcam began taking its music group to provide entertainment at an annual picnic for about 300 disabled adults from around the area. It is held at Wildcat Park each year. Here's John doing Johnny Be Good and Matt doing his Elvis impersonation. In 2006, board members and former board members recognized Glenn Runge for his efforts. Glenn passed away in 2010. In 2008, Elcam did another fun and educational project with its clients. We got pheasant eggs and put them in an incubator and watched them hatch, raised the pheasants, eventually putting them outside, and finally releasing them. In 2009, Elcam did a summer pilot project that was designed for children with autism spectrum disorder. It was held on 4 different Sundays throughout that summer, and each afternoon had a different theme. The project demonstrated that the community center was a potential tool to serve children with autism. Elcam, however, did not continue the program because Dickinson Mental Health Center received a grant to set up a program to serve children with ASD. Despite all the programs that had been developed in the community center, it was felt that it was still being underutilized. So in light of these tremendous resources, Elcam once again expanded its vision of what Elcam could do for the community and began construction of the Child Center in early 2012. We were told that there was a need for a child center that would serve about 20 children. Naomi Tucker designed the center and developed the programs, and within a year there were 70 kids and a long waiting list. Some of the activities at the Child Center from June 2012 through December of 2013 included a Halloween performance, Christmas performance, Easter performance, the outdoor play area, fun in the multi-purpose room, outdoor bag races, picking potatoes, but Cooper's having more fun playing with the worms, the bounce house, winter activities, the mud pits. The Child Center incorporates the Montessori methods, which focuses on sensory development. The water table, bowling, visits to the library, the Elk Visitor Center, the police department, Maddie didn't like that cage. The St. Mary's Airport. The fire department. Train rides. Wendy's. The American Legion. Benzinger Park. And blueberry picking at the Sorgs. The garden patch was completed in 2013. It is in addition to the garden plots that are located in the outdoor recreational area. Both areas are used by both the clients and the children. The clients like to plant crops such as potatoes, corn, carrots, tomatoes, cucumbers. The children like to pick things such as peas, little tomatoes, and berries. A variety of fruits have been planted in the garden plot area, which include red and yellow raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, honeyberries, kiwis, apples, and grapes. Here are the children in the pumpkin patch, and with their pumpkins. The kids could get lost in the sunflower patch. A bronze statue of two children reading a book has been placed at the entrance to the Child Center. This bronze statue was purchased by Roger Hasselman, who was president of Elcam in 2013. Pictured with Roger are 4 of the Child Center staff and some of the children. There were many challenges and needs to be met over the first 41 years. The next 41 years will see many new challenges and needs to be met. Elcam is rooted in the basic tenets of the rehabilitation movement following World War I. Individuals need to feel and to be productive, and society is best served by providing those opportunities. Elcam is a unique application of the best aspects of the free enterprise system. A nonprofit organization strives to be self-sufficient as well as generating money, which in turn is applied to developing needed community services.